The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the mountain ridges surrounding Forward Operating Base Vanguard when Staff Sergeant Mia Clark stepped onto the long-range rifle qualification course. The air was still cold at this altitude, 8,000 feet in the Hindu Kush Mountains, and her breath formed small clouds as she carried her rifle case toward the firing line. The CheyTac Intervention M200 wasn't standard military issue. The .408 caliber precision rifle was used almost exclusively by specialized units for extreme long-range engagements, the kind where targets were measured not in hundreds of meters, but in thousands. Most soldiers would never even see one, let alone be qualified to use it. Mia had requested range time to zero the weapon, a routine procedure to calibrate the optics after transport. What she hadn't expected was the small crowd that had gathered to watch, including a two-star general who was visiting the FOB for operational briefings. Major General Robert Harrison stood with his arms crossed, his expression skeptical as he watched the slim woman with the tied-back blonde hair methodically unpack the massive rifle. He'd been in the Army for 32 years, commanded infantry battalions, led task forces, seen combat in 3 different wars. In his experience, soldiers who looked like they belonged in recruiting posters rarely had the hard-earned skills of veterans who'd spent years in the dirt. "That's the CheyTac?" he asked the range officer, Captain James Mitchell, who stood beside him with a clipboard. "Yes, sir," Mitchell confirmed. "Staff Sergeant Clark requested range time to zero the weapon. She's apparently qualified on it, which is unusual for someone in her MOS." "What is her MOS?" Harrison asked, curious despite himself. "Intelligence analyst, sir. She works in the S2 shop, mostly does threat assessments and tactical intelligence products." Harrison's skepticism deepened. An intelligence analyst with a CheyTac rifle. That made about as much sense as a cook with a nuclear weapon. Has she ever actually fired that thing, or is this some kind of vanity project? "Her file says she's qualified, sir, but I don't have details on where or when she received the training." On the firing line, Mia had finished assembling the CheyTac, a process that required more care than standard rifles due to the weapon's precision tolerances. The rifle was massive, nearly 4 feet long, weighing almost 30 pounds, fully configured with its suppressor and Schmidt and Bender scope. The .408 CheyTac round it fired was designed to remain supersonic past 2,000 meters, delivering devastating accuracy at ranges where most rifles became ineffective. She settled into a prone position behind the weapon, her body positioning textbook perfect, left leg straight, right leg cocked for stability, elbows positioned to create a stable platform, cheek weld consistent and repeatable. Her breathing slowed, becoming controlled and measured. The target was at 1,000 meters, a full kilometer downrange, appearing as a small white square against the brown mountainside. For most rifles, it would be an impressive shot. For the CheyTac and someone who knew how to use it, it should be routine. But before we show you what happens when a 2-star general watches an intelligence analyst make shots that most designated marksmen couldn't dream of attempting, and then discovers why this particular soldier has a CheyTac rifle with her name on it, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because what's about to be revealed will prove that some warriors hide their most dangerous skills behind ordinary job titles, waiting for the moment when those skills become necessary. Mia made her final adjustments to the scope, compensating for the morning wind that was gusting intermittently across the valley, for the temperature and altitude, for the Coriolis effect that would deflect the bullet at extreme ranges. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, making minute adjustments to turrets calibrated in increments of 1/4 minute of angle. "She actually looks like she knows what she's doing," Harrison observed quietly, his skepticism beginning to shift toward curiosity. "Target acquisition," Mitchell called to Mia, following proper range safety protocol. Mia's response was immediate and professional. "Target acquired. Ready to fire. Range is hot. You may commence." Mia's breathing settled into the rhythm she'd learned years ago, a pattern so ingrained it was automatic. Inhale, exhale, halfway, hold. The crosshairs steadied on the distant target, her finger taking up slack on the trigger with steady pressure. The CheyTac roared, the suppressor reducing, but not eliminating the massive report of the .408 caliber round, leaving the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second. The rifle's recoil was substantial despite its weight and sophisticated recoil mitigation system, but Mia rode it smoothly, her body absorbing the impact without breaking position. Through her scope, she tracked the bullet's impact. At 1,000 meters, even supersonic rounds took over a second to reach target. She counted unconsciously 1,000 and saw the splash. Dead center. Jesus, Mitchell breathed, bringing up his spotting scope to confirm. Perfect center hit at 1K. That's exceptional shooting. Harrison said nothing, but his attention was now completely focused on the woman behind the rifle. She was already chambering another round, making a tiny adjustment to her scope, probably compensating for a wind shift he couldn't even detect at this distance. The second shot followed 10 seconds later. Another center hit, then a third. Same result. 3 for 3 at 1,000 meters, Mitchell reported unnecessarily. Everyone with optics could see the tight group she'd just put on target. Sir, that's Olympic-level marksmanship. I've never seen an intelligence analyst shoot like that. Neither have I, Harrison admitted. Captain, I want to see her personnel file. Something doesn't add up here. On the firing line, Mia was adjusting for the 1,500-meter target, a much more challenging shot that would push even experienced marksmen. The wind was picking up, gusting between 8 and 12 miles per hour, with irregular intervals that made prediction difficult. She took her time, reading the wind by watching how it moved the sparse vegetation on the hillside, making calculations that combined mathematics with intuition born from hundreds of hours behind a scope. The CheyTac's computer-assisted firing system could help with some variables, but ultimately, the shot depended on the skill of the shooter. The rifle spoke again. This time the wait was longer, almost 2 full seconds for the bullet to traverse the distance. Impact. Another center hit. That's not possible, Mitchell said flatly. Nobody shoots that consistently at 1,500 meters without extensive specialized training. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to ask her some questions about her background. Permission granted, Harrison replied. In fact, I'll come with you. They walked to the firing line as Mia was preparing for a 2,000-meter shot, the maximum effective range most sniper systems could reliably achieve. The CheyTac could shoot much farther, but 2K was considered the practical limit for consistent accuracy. Staff Sergeant Clark, Mitchell called as they approached. Mia immediately made the weapons safe, ejecting the magazine and visually clearing the chamber before acknowledging them. When she saw the 2-star general standing beside her range officer, she came smoothly to attention. At ease, Sergeant, Harrison said. That's some impressive shooting. Where did you learn to handle a CheyTac? Special training, sir, Mia replied, her tone professional but deliberately vague. What kind of special training? Harrison pressed. Your file says you're an intelligence analyst. That's my current MOS, sir. My previous assignments involved different skill sets. Captain Mitchell tells me you own this rifle, Harrison continued, gesturing to the CheyTac. That's not standard issue for any conventional unit I'm aware of. So I'll ask again. Where did you learn to shoot like this? Mia hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather credential case, offering it to the general. Harrison opened it and felt his eyebrows rise. The identification inside was from a unit that technically didn't exist, with a clearance level that exceeded his own. He'd been in the military long enough to know what that meant. Special operations, the kind of assignments that never appeared in official records. I see, he said quietly, handing back the credentials. And the CheyTac? Personal weapon, sir. Purchased through approved channels after my last assignment ended. What was your last assignment, Sergeant? Mia met his gaze directly. I can't discuss that, sir. Classified, but if you contact the number on that ID card, they can provide you with what information is cleared for release. Mitchell was looking between them, clearly confused by the exchange. Sir, what's going on? The staff sergeant has a background that isn't reflected in her standard personnel file, Harrison explained. Apparently a background that includes some very specialized skills. He turned back to Mia. How far have you made confirmed kills with this weapon, Sergeant? Sir, I can't. I'm not asking for classified details, Harrison interrupted. Just a number. How far? Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then, 4,200 meters, sir. Confirmed kill on a high-value target in mountainous terrain with a 30-kilometer-per-hour crosswind. But that was with a different rifle and under very specific circumstances. The range fell silent. 4,200 meters. That was 2.6 miles. At that distance, bullets were affected by wind, temperature, air density, the rotation of the Earth itself. Making a hit at that range wasn't just marksmanship. It was art combined with physics combined with instinct that couldn't be taught in any school. Who are you? Harrison asked quietly. Right now, sir, I'm an intelligence analyst at FOB Vanguard, Mia replied. Before that, I was someone who took shots nobody else could make. Before Harrison could respond, the radio on Mitchell's belt crackled to life. TOC to range officer, emergency traffic, how copy? Mitchell keyed the radio immediately. Range officer copies, send it. We have troops in contact approximately 15 clicks north of your position. CheyTac is requesting sniper support for a pinpoint engagement against enemy personnel in a structure containing friendly hostages. All available precision marksmen are to report to TOC immediately. Mitchell looked at Harrison, who nodded. Acknowledge, we're en route. Then to Mia. Sergeant, you heard the call. Grab your gear. Sir, with respect, I'm an intelligence analyst, Mia protested, though her hands were already breaking down the CheyTac with practiced efficiency. I'm not on the active sniper roster. You are now, Harrison said flatly. If you can shoot like you just demonstrated, our people need you. That's not a request, Sergeant. That's an order. 10 minutes later, Mia was in the Tactical Operations Center, her CheyTac fully assembled and her gear packed for immediate deployment. The TOC was controlled chaos, radio traffic, satellite feeds, officers coordinating the response to the troops in contact. A lieutenant colonel approached carrying a tablet with overhead imagery. You're the sniper? He asked Mia, his tone skeptical as he took in her slight build and intelligence analyst uniform. I'm a qualified marksman, sir, Mia confirmed. What's the situation? We have a SEAL team pinned down in a village, the lieutenant colonel explained, pulling up imagery on a large display screen. They were conducting a capture operation on an HVT when they got compromised. The target is holed up in this building here. He indicated a 2-story structure, with at least 6 hostiles and 2 local civilians being used as human shields. Rules of engagement? Mia asked, studying the imagery. Minimize civilian casualties, capture the HVT if possible, but lethal force is authorized. The problem is, the building is surrounded by a hostile crowd, and the SEAL team can't assault without massive collateral damage. They need someone to neutralize the hostiles inside the building without hitting the civilians. From where? Mia asked, zooming in on the terrain around the village. That's the challenge. The only position with clean lines of fire into the building is here. He indicated a ridgeline, which is 3,200 meters from the target building. The room fell silent. 3,200 meters, 2 miles. Nobody made combat shots at that distance, except Mia had made a shot at 4,200 meters. I can make that shot, she said quietly, but I'll need good intelligence on wind conditions, exact target locations, and spotting support. You'll have a full JTAC team, the lieutenant colonel promised. Blackhawk is spinning up now for transport. We need you on that ridgeline in 30 minutes. Mia nodded, checking her equipment one final time. General Harrison approached, his earlier skepticism completely gone. Sergeant Clark, I don't know your full story, and I'm starting to realize I probably don't want to know, he said quietly. But those SEALs are counting on you. Can you make this shot? Sir, I've made harder shots, Mia replied with confidence that wasn't arrogance, just statement of fact. But every shot is different. I'll do everything in my power to bring our people home safe. That's all any soldier can do, Harrison acknowledged. Good hunting, Sergeant. The Blackhawk insertion was fast and rough, the pilots flying nap of the earth to avoid detection. Mia sat in the cargo bay with her spotter, a Ranger-qualified staff sergeant named Marcus Webb, who'd been pulled from another assignment, and her CheyTac, a captain named Sarah Rodriguez, who would coordinate with the SEAL team and provide targeting information. "You ever shot this far in combat?" Webb asked over the intercom, his tone professional but curious. "Yes," Mia confirmed, "but every shot is unique. Terrain, weather, stress, they all factor in." "What's your record?" Webb pressed. 4,200 meters, Mia replied. "High-value target elimination in classified circumstances." Webb let out a low whistle. "Ma'am, that's world-class. That's Carlos Hathcock, Chris Kyle territory." "Those men are legends," Mia said. "I'm just a soldier doing my job." The helicopter flared over the ridgeline, hovering long enough for the team to fast rope out before immediately departing. Mia hit the ground and moved immediately to the designated position, a rocky outcrop that provided both concealment and a clear line of sight toward the target village, visible in the valley below. Through her scope, she could see the village, a collection of mud brick buildings typical of rural Afghanistan, with the target structure in the center. Even at maximum magnification, it looked impossibly small. "Rodriguez to Trident 1-6, we are in position," the CheyTac transmitted. "Snipers establishing firing solution. Stand by." "Trident 1-6 copies," a voice came back. The SEAL team leader, his voice tight with stress. "We are still under effective fire. Multiple hostiles visible in second-story windows. Civilians confirmed in ground floor. We cannot assault without unacceptable collateral damage." Mia was already working the problem, her training taking over. Webb was beside her with a spotting scope and laser rangefinder, calling out environmental data. "Range 3,187 meters, Webb reported. "Wind 10 kilometers per hour, gusting to 15, variable direction between 8 and 10 o'clock. Temperature 18 degrees Celsius, air pressure." "I've got it," Mia interrupted, making calculations in her head and with the CheyTac's ballistic computer. At this range, she had to account for literally everything. Wind, temperature, humidity, altitude, even the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation would push the bullet several feet off course. Through her scope, she studied the target building. Second-story windows, hostile forces visible. But at this distance, even with her powerful optic, she couldn't clearly distinguish individual features. She was shooting at shapes, at thermal signatures, at intelligence provided by the SEAL team on the ground. "Trident, this is Sniper," Mia transmitted. "I need positive identification on hostile positions. Which windows are they firing from?" "North-facing windows, second floor. We count 3 visible hostiles, all armed with AK variants," the SEAL team leader reported. "Civilians are ground floor, northeast corner room." Mia adjusted her aim point, settling her crosshairs on the northernmost second-story window. At this distance, the bullet would drop over 400 feet from bore line. It would drift horizontally from wind. It would be affected by the decreasing air density at altitude. She was essentially shooting blind, trusting mathematics and instinct in equal measure. "I have a shot on target 1, Mia reported. "North window, hostile with rifle. Confirm authorization to engage." There was a brief pause as the chain of command processed the request. Then, General Harrison's voice came over the command net. He was monitoring from the TOC. "Sniper, TOC actual. You are authorized to engage all hostile targets. Rules of engagement: lethal force authorized, minimize civilian casualties, capture HVT if possible." "Copy all," Mia acknowledged. She settled deeper into her position, her breathing slowing, her heart rate dropping as her body entered the zone that all precision shooters know, that state where nothing exists except the rifle, the target, and the shot. "Send it," Webb said quietly beside her. Mia's finger took up the trigger slack. At this range, even a tiny movement could cause a miss. She needed to be perfect. The CheyTac roared. The massive .408 caliber round left the barrel at 3,000 feet per second, beginning its long arc toward the target. At 3,187 meters, the bullet would be in flight for nearly 4 full seconds, an eternity in combat. Through her scope, Mia watched, mentally tracking the bullet's path, counting the seconds. 3, 4. "Hit!" Webb called, watching through his spotting scope. "Target 1 is down. Confirmed hostile elimination." Trident confirms, Rodriguez relayed. Target 1 neutralized, excellent shot, 2 more hostiles still active. But the second hostile had realized they were under sniper fire and had pulled back from the window, making targeting impossible. Mia settled in to wait, knowing that patience was as important as marksmanship. Sniper, Trident, hostiles are repositioning. Stand by for new target data, the SEAL team leader transmitted. 5 minutes passed. 10. The hostile forces inside the building were smart enough to stay away from windows, making Mia's task much harder. But they were also trapped. The SEAL team had the building surrounded, and reinforcements were en route. Movement, Webb said suddenly. Second floor, west-facing window. I have visual on what looks like the HVT, surrounded by 2 hostiles, possible weapon visible. Mia swung her scope to the indicated window. Through the powerful optic, she could just make out figures, one in the center matching the description of their high-value target, flanked by 2 armed men who were clearly using him as a shield. Trident, this is Sniper. I have visual on possible HVT with 2 hostile guards, Mia transmitted. Cannot engage without risk to primary target. Copy, Sniper. HVT is wearing traditional Afghan clothing, brown vest, distinctive red turban. Hostiles are in tactical gear. Can you separate your shot? At 3,187 meters, the margin for error was measured in inches. A tiny miscalculation, a gust of wind at the wrong moment, a fractional movement by the target, any of those could turn a precision shot into a disaster. But this was what Mia had been trained for. This was why she had a CheyTac instead of a standard rifle, why her record showed shots at distances most soldiers couldn't even imagine. I can make the shot, Mia confirmed, but I need the HVT to move approximately 1 meter to his right, separate from the guards. Working on it, the SEAL team leader replied. 90 seconds later, a flashbang detonated on the north side of the building, not close enough to harm anyone, but loud and bright enough to be threatening. The HVT and his guards instinctively moved away from the sound, and for just a moment, the target separated from his human shields. Send it, Webb urged. Mia was already on target, her crosshairs tracking the guard on the left. At this range, at this difficulty, she had maybe 2 seconds before the opportunity closed. The CheyTac spoke. 4 seconds of flight time. Then, hit! Right side guard is down. Mia didn't celebrate, didn't pause. She worked the bolt, chambering another round, swinging back to target. The left side guard was moving, raising his weapon toward where he thought the shot had come from. Second shot. Another 4-second wait that felt like forever. Hit. Left side guard eliminated. HVT is exposed, Rodriguez called. SEAL team is moving to capture. Through her scope, Mia watched as the SEAL team breached the building, smoke grenades providing concealment. Controlled bursts of gunfire, suppressed weapons eliminating remaining resistance. Then, Trident has the package, I say again. HVT is secure, civilians are safe, facility is secure. The tension that had been coiling in Mia's gut released all at once. She made the CheyTac safe, pulled back from her firing position, and only then realized her hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline crash after the intensity of combat shooting. 2 for 2 at over 3,000 meters, Webb said, staring at her with something like awe. Ma'am, I've been spotting for snipers for 8 years. I have never, ever seen shooting like that. Who the hell are you? Someone who used to do this for a living, Mia replied quietly. The extraction helicopter arrived 20 minutes later, taking them back to FOB Vanguard. Mia sat quietly during the flight, lost in memories of previous missions, previous shots, the career she'd thought she'd left behind. General Harrison was waiting on the landing pad when they touched down. He didn't say anything at first, just studied Mia with an expression that mixed respect and curiosity. The SEAL team sends their thanks, he finally said. You saved American lives today, Sergeant. And you prevented civilian casualties while capturing a high-value target. That's exceptional work. Just doing my job, sir, Mia replied. No, Harrison corrected. You did someone else's job, someone with training and experience that goes way beyond what your file suggests. Captain Mitchell pulled your records. There's about 3 years in there that are completely redacted. And now I'm starting to understand why." He gestured for her to follow him, leading her away from the landing pad to a quiet area where they could talk privately. "I made some calls," Harrison continued. "Spoke to some people who actually know your real background. You want to know what they told me? They said you're one of the best long-range precision marksmen they've ever worked with, that your 4,200-meter shot isn't just a record. It was a mission-critical elimination that prevented an attack on American forces. They said you spent 3 years doing work that most people don't even know exists, taking shots that saved countless lives." "Sir, that's classified," Mia started. "I know it's classified," Harrison interrupted, "and I don't need the details. What I need to understand is why someone with your capabilities is sitting in an S2 shop analyzing intelligence reports instead of doing what you're clearly trained to do." Mia was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. "Sir, I did that work for 3 years. Every mission, every shot, every kill, they all stay with you. I wanted to contribute in a different way, use my skills in analysis instead of trigger pulling. I thought I could leave that part of my life behind." "But you can't," Harrison observed. "Can you? Because when the call came, when soldiers needed you, you picked up that rifle like it was an extension of your body. You made shots that saved lives without hesitation." "No, sir," Mia admitted. "I can't leave it behind. I thought I could, but today proved otherwise." Harrison nodded slowly. "Sergeant Clark, I'm not going to order you back into your previous role. That's not my decision to make. But I'm going to make a recommendation to your chain of command that your capabilities be reconsidered for active deployment. Because the Army needs soldiers like you, soldiers who can do what nobody else can do when it matters most." "I understand, sir," Mia said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely sure how she felt about that. "For what it's worth," Harrison added, "I think you made the right call today. You could have said no, could have claimed you weren't qualified, could have let someone else try to make those shots, but you didn't. You stepped up when soldiers needed you. That's what warriors do." Over the next several weeks, Mia's shooting performance became something of a legend around FOB Vanguard. The story spread through the military grapevine, embellished with each retelling, but the core facts remained true. An intelligence analyst with a classified past had made combat shots at distances most soldiers couldn't even imagine, saving American lives and completing a critical mission. The paperwork caught up with the legend. Mia was put in for a Bronze Star with V device for valor in combat. Her previous unit, the one that technically didn't exist, reached out with inquiries about her returning to operational status. Multiple Special Operations Commands requested her for training evolutions and operational deployments, but Mia turned them all down. She'd proven to herself that she could still do the work, that her skills remained sharp, that when necessary, she could be the warrior she'd been trained to be. She just didn't want it to be necessary anymore. 3 months after the mission, she was back in the S2 shop, analyzing intelligence reports, creating threat assessments, doing the quieter work that kept soldiers safe in different ways. Her CheyTac stayed in its case in her quarters, cleaned and maintained but unused, until the day Captain Rodriguez from the JTAC team found her in the operations center. "Sergeant Clark, I need you to look at something," Rodriguez said, pulling up satellite imagery on a secure terminal. "We've identified a high-value target approximately 4,000 meters from the nearest position where we can stage an overwatch element. Terrain makes close approach impossible, and air assets are unavailable due to weather. Command is considering whether the shot is even feasible." Maya studied the imagery, her mind automatically calculating angles, distances, environmental factors. 4,000 meters, 2.5 miles, at the absolute edge of what was possible with the CheyTac, even under perfect conditions. "Who else are they considering for this?" Mia asked. "Nobody else can make this shot," Rodriguez replied bluntly. "You're the only operator within 500 kilometers with the capability to even attempt it." Mia was quiet, staring at the imagery. She'd wanted to leave this life behind, wanted to be something other than a long-range killer, but soldiers were depending on her again. Lives hung in the balance again. "When?" she asked quietly. "Mission brief is at 1400 hours, Rodriguez said. "Will you be there?" Mia thought about the general who'd discovered her secret, about the SEAL team she'd saved, about the skills she'd tried to walk away from but couldn't fully abandon. "Yeah," she finally said. "I'll be there." Because that's what warriors did. They answered the call, even when they'd rather not. They used their skills to protect their brothers and sisters in arms, even when those skills came with costs that most people couldn't understand. Maya Clark had tried to be just an intelligence analyst, but she'd learned that some skills, once acquired, became part of who you are. You could change your job title, your assignment, your daily routine, but you couldn't change what training had made you. And when the moment came that required those skills, when lives depended on abilities that only you possessed, the warrior within would always answer. The general had watched her zero the CheyTac and discovered her 4,200-meter combat record, but more importantly, he discovered something else, that some soldiers carried capabilities far beyond what their job titles suggested, waiting silently until the moment those capabilities became necessary. And Mia Clark, intelligence analyst and ghost sniper, was exactly that kind of soldier. The rifle case waited in her quarters. The mission brief was in 2 hours. She'd answer the call, again, because that's what warriors did. The mission brief revealed a target even more challenging than the previous engagement. A terrorist cell leader had been tracked to a compound in a remote mountain valley, surrounded by terrain that made conventional approach impossible. The only feasible firing position was a peak 4,100 meters away, farther than her record shot, in conditions that meteorologists were calling marginal at best. "Weather window is 6 hours, the briefing officer explained. "After that, visibility drops to 0 and the operation is scrubbed. This is our only chance to eliminate this target before he disappears across the border." Mia studied the terrain maps, the wind forecasts, the target analysis. Everything about this screamed impossible shot, the kind of engagement that existed more in theory than practice, that training manuals used as examples of the absolute limits of long-range precision fire. "I need 2 things," Mia said finally, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what she was committing to. "First, the best spotter available. Second, complete operational autonomy once I'm in position. No second guessing, no committee decisions. I call the shot or I don't take it." General Harrison, who'd been observing the brief, nodded immediately. "You'll have both. This is your mission, Sergeant. We're just support." As Mia left the briefing room to prepare her equipment, she passed a mirror and caught her own reflection. Intelligence analyst, ghost sniper, warrior. She'd tried to choose which one she wanted to be, but maybe the truth was simpler. She was all of them, and soldiers like her didn't get to choose when their skills were needed. They just answered the call, made the impossible shots, and lived with what that meant. The CheyTac was waiting. So was the mission. Time to prove that some records were made to be broken. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.